All right, so let's talk about the lab write up for the potato lab. Okay, so for the potato lab, the lab write up, I kind of gone over this with you guys yesterday. So in this case, um, this is just a quick video describing and re-explaining about what I'm expecting to see. So just to keep first part here, the concept of a lab report is you're just recording your experiment. How did you do it? Why you're doing it, as well as the result, as well as any findings you learned from doing that experiment. So that's what a lab report is. Now, your lab report for me, it must be typed, and you have to have the result tables and graph done on a Google Sheet or Excel. Okay, and the due date is the Thursday before lunch. No, the due date is March 27th. So March 27th, it's I believe the Friday since we get back from the break. So on the Friday that we get back from the break, you have to give me the paper as well as electronic submission. You have to do both. Electronic submission will be on Brightspace under the assignment. Okay. Now, if you're able to share your lab with me anytime before uh, Thursday lunchtime, the earlier the better. If you're able to share it with me, I can give you some formative feedback on how you can improve your lab write-up. Okay, so that's that. Now, what do you need to do? You need to have a purpose. Now, um, your purpose, you can just use the lab write-up, this part here. Okay, you can just use this here estimating osmolarity of. Now, instead of plant cells, you need to find the binomial name of potatoes. So you need to find whatever it is by change in weight. Okay, so that should be your purpose. Now, in terms of material, I don't need you to give me a whole long list. You can just say see handout with these changes. Now, the changes, though, you do need to type in. You do need to type in. So, uh, if you take a look over here, we were using 850 ml beakers instead of all these. And in terms of sucrose solution, we were only using these four concentration. We did not use a cork borer. We were using a vegetable chopper. And I'll show you the link of the vegetable chopper that I got from Amazon on the unit planner later on. We were also using tap water instead of deionized water. Okay, so those are some of the key changes that we made to the material list. Okay, now in terms of procedure, what I do want you guys to do is for your procedure, you can do it in a storyboard format or a flow chart. A storyboard format or a flow chart. So, what you still need to do, you still need to show things in steps. Okay. So, step one, if you're doing a storyboard, you'll probably draw something that looks like the vegetable chopper, and then that says a potato, and then you write a few lines saying cut potatoes in strips. Okay. Now, if you're using a flow chart, you're not drawing this out, then you do need to write the same thing, but you will also need to say with a vegetable chopper. And then step two, oh, you cut these strips into cubes of 1 centimeter thick, so 1 centimeter, with a ruler and razor blade. Okay, if you're doing flow chart, I think the wording is fine. Okay, using those wordings should be fine. The reason why we're doing storyboard and flowchart is that it is in some ways not as it is not as grammatically demanding. It is not as grammatically demanding, which makes it a little bit easier. Uh, However, your the writing here, it needs to be clear enough that another bio student from a different class can understand what on earth you did. Okay, so that they can understand what they did, and if they were to copy you, can do exactly the same thing. Okay, so you might want to Find a friend to proofread it if you want to before your final submission. That's one thing. Um, Now, your result, okay? The result. Now, I do need you to reorganize your result. We were writing things on the board to make it a little bit so that at least it's visible, but I do want you guys to reorganize it. You should have two tables. You should have a raw data table. It should look something like this, okay? On the top, you have the four different sucrose osmolarity, the concentration of the sugar solution. We have a beaker one, we have a beaker two. So you have the final mass in grams, initial mass in grams of the potato, right? For beaker two, final mass, initial mass. So here, that's the example from the zero point 0.1 molar solution. So in this case, you can see the final mass, final mass, initial mass for beaker one and two. And you will need to do the same thing for the other ones, reorganize it. You have to do it on Excel, okay, or Google Sheet. And then you copy and paste it onto your Google Doc. Now, in terms of process data table, that's the second one. Process data table, basically, once you've done any type of math, it's considered data process. So in this case, the mass change in beaker one, like it gained weight about 1.8 grams. So you write it here. You shouldn't need to have this part though. And it also gained mass in 0.7 grams to go from here to here. Now, the reason why I cross out the unit here is because I had already had the units here under the heading. So that's, you shouldn't have that anymore. So the average mass change. So you have these two mass change, okay? You add them together, divided by 2. So you should have an average mass gain of this. Now, in terms of the percentage mass gain, you will have to use this average mass change divide by, here this number, the 9.0, it's really the average of these two initial mass. So you do need to use the average of the two initial mass, okay, for this part of the calculation. Times 100, that will give you a number, okay? And you have to do the same thing for these. After you've done the process data table, okay, mark this page. After you have all these average percentage change in mass, now you have to do a graph, okay? Ideally, your graph will look something like this. Your graph will look something like this. You have the average percentage mass change on the y-axis. On the x-axis, you have the molarity, the concentration, 0.1, 0.2, 0.3, 0.4, and you plot these 4 points, okay? You plot these 4 points. Now, you're going to add a linear trend line, okay? You're going to add a linear trend line. Now, where this trend line cuts through the x-axis, that would be the osmolarity of the potato. Okay, of course, you have to say this binomial name. Okay, so that's how your graph should kind of look like. Okay, and you need to do this on Google Sheet or Excel and then add it onto your Google Doc. In terms of your discussion, you do need to do discussion question number 1 to 3. So discussion question number 1 to 3 here, make sure you use that to answer these 3 questions under discussion. Now your conclusion. Conclusion is really the final answer of your purpose. You were trying to find the osmolarity of the potato. Now you found it. So the osmolarity of the binomial name potato is so many moles. Okay, you will kind of need to find that number, what that is. So that's your conclusion. Now, I do want you to do an additional thing. Set up a table like this and find the sources of error and the ways to improve, way of improvement. So when you say sources of error, I don't mean any human errors, like, oh, I was not careful and I spilled some of the
Excuse
liquid.
the interruption. Mr. Mish, dial 1806. Mr. Mish.
So, um, not human errors like that, but we're talking about systematic error, okay? Something that because of the way we were doing the experiment, there are certain flaw that maybe we were not able to measure things carefully or accurately, or we're not able to control how the experiment went. So in this case, um, you what I would like you to do is you should find two to five different source of errors. Okay, 2 to 5 different source of error, and they have to be realistic. Okay, and then once you find those sources of error, you think of a different way to improve it. Okay, and these ways of improvement of those sources of error should be realistic. It should be something that we can do in our school or in the classroom. Okay, you don't have to build an entire machine for it. Okay. Um, some of the things you might want to think about is how did we get those small cubes of potatoes? Okay, and if you may want to recall, like, hey, when we were looking at the results, do those cubes look identical do all the cubes look the same? If they're not, what happened, and how do you think we can make it better? Okay. And then now this section here, I'm gonna mark it with including originality and creativity. Okay, or originality and creativity. So if your errors and improvement are something like all seven of you came up with the same thing, that's not really original or creative. Okay, this part, it should be something that I can tell. It should be very original. Okay, it should be very original. Should be very creative ways of thinking, and this is where if you are a creative type person, I should see this is where you shine on that part. Okay, so as I said, that's your lab write up for me. It is due, not this paper. It is due on March 27th, Friday after we get back. You need to print it out and upload it on Brightspace at this point. Okay. If you have any question, make sure you ask me. Okay. Good luck.